This is Keith Ward with Visual Studio Magazine, and joining me right now is Andrew Brust. Andrew is a speaker and the co-host of Visual Studio Live. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, you mentioned big data, and this is also a topic that you write about for my magazine and for other sites. What is Microsoft's relationship with big data right now? You don't think of Microsoft like you think of some of the other big data companies, but it's true that Microsoft is moving into that area, isn't it?
It's moving into that area in a big way. They've partnered with a company called Hortonworks, which is probably one of the two biggest companies in the big data Hadoop space. Hadoop is this sort of emblematic open source project around big data, and actually Hortonworks is a spin-off of the team at Yahoo that worked for the most part on Hadoop. So that's a pretty serious partner to have, and Microsoft has worked with Hortonworks to bring Hadoop to Windows and also to bring it to Windows Azure. And that finally entered public preview, I think it was last week. So
right.
we're getting into a much more serious mode with this, and there's more and more tie-ins, not just from the Microsoft business intelligence stack, but even more common parts of that, like Excel 2013. There's stuff built right in to talk to Hadoop. So Microsoft is absolutely there.
And so that kind of leads into my next question. With this new emphasis on larger quantities of data, is Microsoft providing the kind of tools that .NET developers need to massage this data, to move it around, to do what they need to do with it in their programs?
That's a great question, because on the one hand, Microsoft's heritage has been tools to make things easier. And on the other hand, if you look at the big data world overall, the tooling in general is pretty lousy. And Microsoft is sort of bridging that gap, as you would expect them to. Given that tools are what they're all about, and given that the bar is pretty low right now, Microsoft's trying to pounce on that opportunity and doing a pretty good job. So the BI tools that I mentioned, including Excel, do a good job of that. But Microsoft's implementation of Hadoop itself involves a whole browser-based console for talking to the data, for querying the data, for manipulating the data. That in and of itself is a big deal in a world that's mostly kind of driven by the command line.
Right. And how ready is SQL Server now to handle the new demands of this big data?
Well, SQL Server is sort of one brand for really a lot of different things right now. Mm-hmm. There's one flavor of SQL Server called SQL Server Parallel Data Warehouse Edition. We just call it PDW to make it easier to get home more quickly, I suppose. And PDW is all about big data. So first of all, PDW itself intrinsically can handle petabyte scale data. That's kind of where you want to be if you want to talk about big data and do it with credibility. But the new version just shipped a few weeks ago, version 2, and it's got a component inside of it called Polybase that directly integrates with the Hadoop distributed file system, so that you can query SQL Server using Transact SQL, which most people in this ecosystem know pretty well, and that in turn can go out and run against the data in Hadoop. You can even do joins between Hadoop data and data natively physically stored in a SQL Server database. So that's a big, big deal, especially when it's the same Transact SQL and the same APIs and the same drivers and providers that everybody's already using for more conventional SQL Server work.
Right.